Roxana continues her prayer, asking God Wendon to light the path ahead and watch over her father, King Vixen IV. Roxana thanks the priest with grace and steps outside the Grand Temple of Kanta. The date is April 1557. As she breathes in the fresh spring air, she notes how the chill from earlier has faded, replaced by the warmth of the season. Her thoughts drift to the year-long whirlwind of wedding preparations that have consumed her life since last spring. A soft smile plays on Roxana's lips as she walks through the temple gardens, feeling the breeze lift her hair. The month-long prayer, the most sacred and grueling part of her pre-wedding duties, has finally ended. Now, only the wedding remains. Like all noble and royal women on the continent, she has fulfilled the tradition of offering a month of devotion at the Imperial Grand Temple before entering marriage. As spring arrived in the year she turned 20, Roxana's fate moved forward. Her marriage to Lucas Peluri, Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Ganya, had been arranged long ago. According to custom, the wedding would take place in her homeland, Kanta. After a week of ceremonies and celebration, she would leave everything behind and journey to Ganya, no longer a princess of Kanta, but the crown princess of a foreign kingdom. Roxana had always known this day would come. Since childhood, she had been prepared for the moment she would leave Kanta behind. Yet now that it was near, the reality felt strange and heavy. When she returned from the temple, she would part with her homeland. As she turned, someone called out to her from behind. Roxana's eyes lit up as she recognized her loyal attendant. She called out to Lasha, who rushed forward, breathless and apologetic for being late. Roxana reassured her that she had simply exited earlier than expected. Since companions weren't allowed during the pre-wedding prayer, Lasha had spent the entire month worrying. Tears welled in her eyes as the relief of reunion overwhelmed her. Lasay went to Roxana's arm, insisting she was more concerned about the princess's well-being. She sobbed over the dreadful temple food and how thin Roxana had become. Roxana chuckled and admitted she had eventually gotten used to it. But Lasha, ever dramatic, grabbed a box and shouted that they shouldn't waste time and needed to hurry. Lasha beamed, saying everyone must be eagerly waiting. Roxana returned the smile, her heart lightened by the reunion. As the two departed, the story's title appeared, and the scene shifted to a carriage rolling steadily through a quiet forest path, marking the beginning of their journey. Inside the carriage, Lasha gently remarked that Roxana must have missed her family deeply, having never been apart from them for so long. Roxana nodded and said they would arrive in 10 days, but privately she remembered the night she cried alone, keeping it a secret even from her brothers. Then she turned to Lasha with a troubled look, confessing that something felt off, like this might be the last time she would ever see her family. Lasha quickly reassured her not to think that way. Ganya and Kanta weren't far apart, and the railway made visits easy. She reminded Roxana that Prince Lucas was kind and would surely allow her to visit her family whenever she wished. Roxana repeated his name in her thoughts, Lucas Peluri, her husband, to be. She remembered dancing with Lucas. He was taller than her, gentle, and undeniably handsome. His golden hair suited him, and his refined demeanor made him seem like the perfect prince. As they danced, he softly warned her to watch her step. Roxana admired him, but as murmurs rose around them, she wondered if she had just made a mistake. Later, at a formal gathering, her friend Elise complimented her, saying she was lucky to be engaged to such a dashing man. Roxana thanked her, but inside she wasn't sure. Lucas had always been her fiancé, destined to become her husband. It had never been a choice. As she stared up at the moonlit sky, someone called her name. Under the moonlight, Roxana danced with Lucas again. She told herself he was someone she loved and must love. As he leaned in for a kiss, she wondered if this was only their 5th meeting. In romance novels, kissing the one you love made the world shake, but for her, the world remained still. She recalled Elise's advice, to stay still, act innocent, and let the man take charge. That way, he would handle everything. Roxana followed that advice as Lucas kissed her again, but the moment didn't feel magical. There was no explosion of emotion, just silence. It wasn't terrible, she admitted to herself, but it wasn't breathtaking either. After experiencing feelings like this, she wondered if she would grow to love Lucas. Was this what love felt like? She stared at the moon and let the question linger in her heart. Guards stood watch as the carriage rolled through the night. Lasha tried to lift Roxana's spirits, acknowledging how boring 3 days in a carriage must be. Roxana thanked her and closed her eyes, imagining the comfort of reuniting with her family. She believed that once she spoke to them, the unease in her chest would finally disappear. Roxana longed to see her family soon. But her thoughts were shattered by a sudden jolt, and Lasha's terrified scream. Chaos erupted outside. A knight shouted that they were under attack and that the coachman was dead. The carriage lurched violently as someone yelled to get the princess to safety. Screams pierced the night as knights were struck down. The carriage barreled forward through unfamiliar terrain. Lasha trembled, whispering that they were under attack. Roxana's heart pounded. Her father had feared something like this, even with elite knights guarding her. She realized the path they were on wasn't the planned route. A knight ran alongside, calling her name with urgency. Roxana turned to the knight, Robert, and asked if monsters were attacking. He shouted back that this wasn't the work of monsters. Panic gripped Lasha as the carriage rocked. Roxana's mind raced. If not monsters, then who? The answer chilled her more than the possibility of beasts. Roxana's thoughts spiraled. If these weren't monsters, then who had orchestrated the attack? Bandits wouldn't dare face trained knights. This had been a calculated ambush, likely executed with precision archery. The coachman had probably been taken out with a single arrow. A direct assault wouldn't have succeeded unless someone on the inside helped them. Who would dare target the royal family of Franz? Roxana ruled out neighboring nations. They wouldn't risk war with the monster threat looming. But the identity of the enemy didn't matter right now. Lasha's panicked voice broke her thoughts as she cried out about Sir Robert. Roxana snapped to attention and ordered her to stay calm. Roxana leaned in close and told Lasha to listen carefully. The attackers weren't trying to kill them, they were being abducted. Resistance would only make things worse. She instructed Lasha to comply when the carriage stopped and warned her not to try to protect her. Lasha's voice cracked as she tried to protest. Roxana explained that they couldn't protect themselves with strength alone. For now, they had to comply and wait for a better chance. She realized a knight must have taken over the reins after the coachman was killed. But with no resistance and Robert dead, it was clear. The drivers were in on it. This wasn't a random ambush. It had been planned long ago. If a spy had infiltrated the elite royal knights of Kanta, then this conspiracy had been brewing for a long time. Roxana's thoughts turned to her family. If the enemy had planned this much, were her loved ones safe? The fear gripped her deeper than any sword ever could. The carriage jolts violently as the horse rears back in panic, its hooves thrashing against the night air. With a sickening lurch, the vehicle overturns, hurling Roxana, Evelyn Franz of Kanta, and her maid Lasha into the darkness. They crash to the ground, limbs tangled in fabric and force. Lasha cries out in alarm, calling for the princess as they hit the earth. The chaos is immediate, the betrayal now fully realized in the sound of shattering wood and the thunder of hooves fleeing the scene. Before either woman can recover, a masked knight storms into view, his presence commanding and cold. He stands over Roxana, who is still dazed from the fall. With no hesitation, he addresses her formally, calling her by full name, Princess Roxana Evelyn Franz of Kanta. The declaration confirms what she already feared. This was no random attack. He orders her to come with them, leaving no room for defiance. Lasha clutches her protectively, but both know resistance is futile now. Time slips by in silence. She wonders how long it has been since the ambush. Another voice laughs, remarking that she probably never imagined eating like this. The stale crust in her hand is a cruel reminder of how far she has fallen. Blindfolded and bound, Roxana loses track of time entirely. She cannot see the road nor guess their destination. Her body aches, and her stomach churns with hunger. One of her captors crouches beside her, shoving food into her hands with a sneer. He mocks her, saying even a princess needs to eat to survive. Roxana ignores the jeers and forces herself to eat. Dignity means nothing now. Survival is the only priority. She tells herself she must endure, that she has to live long enough to see her family again. That fragile hope is all she has left. But as the reality of her captivity deepens, even that belief starts to crumble. The bread in her hand feels like ash. Her resolve, once steady, begins to fracture under the weight of despair. Eventually, Roxana is dragged into a grand hall, her blindfold ripped away. Light floods her vision, revealing a throne room she knows all too well. But the man seated on her father's throne is not the king. It's Lucas Pellery. Her breath catches. Confusion and dread twist in her chest. She barely manages to whisper his name before the question escapes her lips. Why is he here? Roxana scans the room in disbelief. Lucas sits in her father's seat. Elise, once her friend, lounges in her mother's place. The sight is surreal. Where is Lasha? What happened to her family? Lucas laughs, mocking her for thinking too much. He rises with a smirk, telling her she's always been like this. Too thoughtful, too composed. His words drip with contempt. But she refuses to look away. Lucas's tone sharpens as he tells Roxana he's sick of her personality. She recoils inwardly, unsure what he means. He leans closer, reminding her of the days she called him my pretty flower and sought his company. He mocks her, saying she was cute back then. The warmth of those memories is gone. All that remains is venom masked as nostalgia. Lucas sneers, saying he never imagined she'd grow up to be so grotesque. Roxana, trembling, asks where her father is, her mother, her family. She clutches a braid in her hand, her voice cracking. Lucas pauses, then coldly replies that she should have asked about her maid first. His words are deliberate, cruel. He turns and walks away, leaving her questions unanswered and her fear growing. Lucas gestures to a subordinate and orders them to open the door. He says the princess deserves to know what happened to her own family. The door creaks open, revealing something inside that makes Roxana's blood run cold. Her eyes widen in horror. A scream tears from her throat, raw, unfiltered agony as the truth crashes down on her all at once. Roxana drifts in a void, her body weightless as if floating on water. She longs to sink deeper, to be swallowed by the darkness and forget everything. Then a voice pierces the haze, Lasha's voice, desperate and pleading. She hears her name, feels the urgency. Lasha is alive. That thought anchors her, but her body refuses to respond. Her eyelids grow heavier as the darkness beckons her back. Still submerged in the void, Roxana wishes she could disappear completely. She recalls the day she left for the Grand Temple, trying to remember the last expression she showed her family. Did she smile? Did she frown? The memory is blurry, like a distant dream. Faces of her loved ones flicker before her, smiling, waving, unaware it would be their final farewell. Roxana gasps for air as she awakens, her body trembling. Lashala rushes to her side, calling out in relief. She checks her condition, asking if she can hear her. Roxana had been unconscious for 2 days. Lasha holds her close, but inside she panics. How can she possibly tell the princess what she overheard last night? The truth is too cruel. Lasha stares at Roxana, torn. If she tells her now, it might break her completely. But silence feels just as cruel. Before she can decide, a loud clamor echoes from outside the cell. They both freeze. The door opens and Elise enters, flanked by 2 men, one bald and grinning, the other silent and watchful. The air thickens with dread. Elise steps forward, her voice soft and mocking as she greets Roxana. Lasha tries to hold the princess back, urging her not to fall apart. But Roxana cries out, overwhelmed by everything. She stares at Elise, her mind racing. What is happening? Why is Elise here? Her former friend looks down at her with a pitying smile and calls her their poor princess. Elise kneels beside her, feigning sorrow. She says it must be so hard for Roxana to endure this place. Roxana clings to a sliver of hope, wondering if Elise had secretly helped her family escape. But her voice trembles as she asks, did Lucas kill them all? Elise doesn't hesitate. Yes, she says. He slaughtered every last one, even the children. Roxana collapses to the floor, whispering why. Why would Lucas be so cruel? He could have exiled them, spared the children. Elise looks away, her expression unreadable. Then she confesses, because she told him to. The words land like a dagger. Roxana's breath catches as the betrayal deepens beyond comprehension. Tears stream down Elise's face, but her voice is steady. She says she was the one who ordered it. Roxana stares at her, stunned. Her mind reels, not just from the confession, but from the horrifying question that follows. What happened to her family's bodies? Elise smiles coldly and asks if she's curious why she did it. Roxana pleads with her, voice cracking, asking what happened to her family's remains. Elise scoffs, calling her selfish and cold. She says she once thought of Roxana as a precious friend. But now, all she feels is shame and self-loathing. Roxana, shaking with fury, demands to know why Elise is crying, when she's the one who lost everything. Roxana can't understand why Elise blames her. Elise lashes out, saying she never should have been saved. Roxana should have let her die with her own family. She shouldn't have shown her pity. Elise's voice rises to a scream. She says Roxana should have let go. Should have let her drown in her grief, instead of dragging her back into a life she never wanted. Elise stands tall, her voice venomous. She says if Roxana had let her go, none of this would have happened. Her family wouldn't have died. They wouldn't have been thrown into a well like garbage. Roxana's eyes fill with tears. Her voice is barely a whisper as she says the only thing she can, she's sorry. 2 court ladies whisper among themselves, unimpressed that no one greeted the envoy immediately. They scoff at Torkin's arrogance. Meanwhile, the envoy strides forward, scroll in hand. He announces his presence with authority, declaring he brings a royal command from the noble King Joseph IV of the Ganya Kingdom, addressed to Grand Duke Floyd Latine. Grand Duke Floyd Carlo Latine lounges on his throne, unimpressed. He mocks the envoy's formality, repeating the phrase royal command with a smirk. Then he chuckles and delivers a sharp proverb, if a mouse lives with a cat, it starts to think it's a cat. He says it fits the envoy perfectly. The court falls silent, as the duke's power becomes unmistakably clear. The envoy trembles, his face contorting with rage. He screams in disbelief, unable to contain his fury. Pointing a shaking finger at Floyd, he shouts that the duke is insolent beyond measure. But his outrage only highlights how little power he truly holds in this foreign court. With a flick of his fingers, Grand Duke Floyd Carlo Latine unleashes a stream of supernatural fire that coils through the air like a serpent. The flames strike the envoy from the Ganya Kingdom, wrapping around his body and lifting him off the ground as he shrieks in agony. His screams echo through the grand hall, his limbs flailing as the fire consumes him. Floyd watches the scene unfold with casual amusement, his smirk deepening as he asks if this time his aim was better. The envoy twists in midair, his body still ablaze as he pleads for someone to stop the torment. A voice calmly remarks that Floyd's accuracy has certainly improved, though it might have just been luck. As the flames tighten around the envoy's throat, another man steps forward, his expression composed but firm. He reminds Floyd that the man writhing in fire is an official envoy from the Ganya Kingdom. Sending him back as a corpse would be a declaration of war. Floyd casually shrugs, muttering a half-hearted whoops, as if the near execution had been a minor accident. The envoy collapses to the floor, gasping and trembling, the smell of burnt cloth clinging to him. Turning his attention away from the man, Floyd addresses Count Conte with a flick of his flaming fingers. He leans back in his chair, relaxed but commanding, and tells Conte to speak. He wants to know what message he's brought. Count Conte steadies his breath and begins to explain. Now that the Conte kingdom has fallen under the control of the Ganya kingdom, the royal court expects Torkan to assist in stabilizing the region. Specifically, they want Floyd to subjugate the monsters that have overrun the surrounding territories. His voice trembles as he outlines the so-called royal command, knowing full well how little patience Floyd has for veiled threats. Floyd exhales sharply at the mention of the Conte kingdom, his tone laced with disdain. 7 months ago, Lucas Falir, crown prince of the Ganya kingdom, raised an army and launched a brutal campaign. King Viction IV's entire family was slaughtered, their palace set ablaze. Rumors claimed even the missing princess perished in the flames. With no survivors to contest the claim, Ganya declared Kanta a colony, its crown shattered and throne usurped. Floyd leans forward, his voice deceptively calm as he asks Count Conte what he truly thinks of this so-called royal command. Conte hesitates, sweat beading on his brow. He stammers that it feels more like a request than a command. Floyd narrows his eyes, reminding him that he was told this was a royal decree. He questions whether Conte is implying he misheard, his tone turning sharp and dangerous. Conte panics, trying to explain himself before the Grand Duke's temper ignites again. Conte collapses to the floor, coughing violently. Floyd stands over him, unimpressed. He scoffs that Ganya's leadership is shameless, if they truly believed such a weak tactic would sway him. With cold authority, he tells Conte to crawl back to his masters and deliver a message. Torkan is not theirs to command, and Floyd is not a dog they can summon with a whistle. Floyd declares that Torkan does not belong to the Ganya kingdom, and that he himself is no longer a loyal hound of the Falir royal family. Conte, trembling, nods in terrified agreement and scrambles away. From the sidelines, one of Floyd's subordinates chuckles, comparing the envoy to a frightened mouse. Another gently warns Floyd that he might be getting too carried away. A silver-haired subordinate approaches, asking if he was wrong in his earlier assessment. Floyd doesn't answer directly. Instead, he announces that he's going for a drink, claiming he's in a foul mood. The man offers to bring out the fine wine imported from Houghton's, but Floyd waves him off. Today, he says, he's in the mood for beer. On the sunlit terrace overlooking the sea, Floyd sits with his men, sipping from a frosty glass of beer. He casually mentions that the French royal family has met a pitiful end. One of the others shrugs, saying it's not like royal families falling from grace is anything new. It happens more often than people think. One of the men raises his glass and says those born to rule must also be ready to fall. Another adds that Lucas went too far, slaughtering even the children. A third notes that assassination threats are practically a rite of passage for royalty. They all nod, acknowledging the brutal reality of noble blood. With a smirk, one teases the other, calling him little brother, and the group shares a rare moment of camaraderie. Floyd listens in silence, then takes another sip of beer. His thoughts drift to the past, the French royal family, the time he spent as a child wandering alone. He remembers staying briefly at Robois Palace, where the nobles looked down on him with contempt. Their scorn was sharp, their rejection absolute. He was nothing to them. Just a stray with no name and no worth. But then there was the Eider Palace of the French royal family, a place filled with light and warmth. The people there had treated him kindly, even if their eyes sometimes held pity. It was the first time he had felt welcome, and among them was a young blonde princess, radiant and gentle. He tries to remember her name, the one they all used for her. Rain pours down as Floyd walks alone through the palace grounds. His cloak is soaked, but he doesn't stop. He stares through the iron gates at the place that once offered him warmth, his mind still reaching for the name of the girl who changed everything. A voice calls out through the rain, Lottie. That was it. The small, pretty princess who shone like the moon, even on the cloudiest day. The French princesses had called her that. Floyd watches her memory bloom in his mind, her golden curls and bright eyes as vivid as ever. From a distance, Floyd watches the scene unfold, unsure why the sight of her laughter makes his chest ache. They encourage her to take a closer look, teasing her gently. Lottie shrieks and flails as one of the attendants holds up a frog. She insists she hates it, but the others laugh and say the frog seems to like her. Lottie walks toward him, her umbrella bobbing with each step. She asks if he's going home. Floyd forces a smile and says yes, but inside, he knows the truth. He has no home to return to. The rain grows heavier. Lottie notices he has no umbrella and offers hers without hesitation. She holds it over his head, shielding him from the downpour. Floyd looks at her, stunned by the gesture, and softly says he's fine, but the warmth in her eyes makes him hesitate. Lottie insists he use the umbrella or he'll catch a cold. Floyd stares at her, wondering if she's really worried about him. No one's ever said something like that to him before. As she runs ahead, she calls back, telling him to come with her. Her voice is light, but it strikes deep. Lottie spins around, her hair catching the rain and light all at once. She shouts one last thing, "Don't get sick." Floyd watches her disappear into the garden, her laughter echoing in his ears. Then someone calls his name, pulling him back to the present. Back on the terrace, Floyd offers a drink to Kirshan Leffe, the knight, physician. Kirshan declines and delivers urgent news. A report from the port says merchants are preparing to depart for the Hobion archipelago, and they might be slave traders. Floyd's eyes narrow as he slams his glass on the table. He curses under his breath, fury rising. Slave traders. In Torkan? Unforgivable. After sea monsters made most trade routes perilous, merchants began flocking to the relatively safe waters surrounding Torkan. It became a hub of commerce, but not all who came had noble intentions. Among the traders, whispers of slavery and forbidden dealings began to surface, threatening the very ideals Floyd had fought to uphold. Torkan stands as the only territory on the continent where the slave trade is explicitly forbidden. Its laws are unyielding, its stance absolute, yet even here, the rot finds a way in. Ships crowd the harbor under the bright sky, sails full and decks bustling, but not all carry honest cargo. Floyd walks the docks with his knights, tense and alert. One of the men explains that the suspected slave traders have already slipped in, using forged papers and evasive routes to reach other nations. When Floyd asks about the scale of the operation, the knight replies that while the group is small, rumors speak of a, quote, big score hidden among them. Floyd scoffs at the thought, finding the idea of such twisted ambition absurd. Floyd leads his knights onto the dock, their pace brisk and focused. One of them informs him that the suspected slave trader is already aboard the ship. Floyd frowns and demands to know why the man wasn't intercepted. The knight explains that they searched the cargo, but all they found were crates of medicinal herbs. However, several boxes bore the crest of the Hobion archipelago's royal family. Those crates were sealed with protective spells, preventing a full inspection. That crest complicates everything. Touching royal cargo without cause could spark diplomatic disaster. Floyd presses for more. What reason do they have to suspect this man of trafficking slaves? One of the younger knights explains that Jack, a local fishmonger who once lived as a slave, recognized the man. Jack swears he saw him transporting slaves in and out of the mansion of the count who once owned him. Another knight steps in, cautioning that the crates in question are marked with the Hobion royal crest. Tampering with them could trigger an international incident. Floyd listens, jaw tight, weighing the risk. If they're wrong, they could offend a powerful kingdom. But if they're right, and slaves are hidden inside, doing nothing would be a betrayal of everything Torkan stands for. Floyd stares at the sealed crates, knowing that the wrong move could provoke war. Depending on what these boxes contain, this could spiral far beyond Torkan's borders. But he also knows the Hobion archipelago is the most active hub for slave trading on the continent. That alone makes their crest suspicious. He makes his decision. He commands his men to open every last crate. One knight hesitates, warning that if Hobion takes offense, it could become a diplomatic crisis. Floyd brushes it off. If they want someone to blame, he'll go to Hobion himself and apologize face to face. His voice rises with finality, open them all. The knights snap to attention, shouting their affirmation and rushing to obey. But elsewhere, darkness coils. Roxana's thoughts drift into the abyss, where memory and curse intertwine. Her family wasn't just killed, they were discarded, thrown into a well like refuse. And with that act, a curse was born, one that defies death, denies peace, and promises eternal unrest. Even if the world itself crumbles, the curse will remain, binding their souls to the shadows. There is no rest for them. No end. Only endless wandering in the dark. To the followers of Whedon, god of rest and passage, this curse is a horror beyond comprehension. Roxana knows what it means. Her family will never cross into the land of peace. Their souls are trapped, circling the dark well, neither alive nor truly dead. She reaches out in her mind, grasping for something. Anything. A voice, soft and full of regret, whispers an apology to her. An apology from someone who once stood beside her, powerless to stop what came next. Lasha kneels beside Roxana, her voice trembling. She remembers how the princess treated her like family, how kindness once flowed freely between them. But now, what can she do? What power does she have to change anything? Her only wish is that Roxana would die before ever smelling the sacred scent of Adelia, the flower tied to their people's rest. That would be mercy. But even that wish is denied. Lasha sighs and says she'll let her live. It's the only gift she has left to give. With a smile that doesn't reach her eyes, Lasha tells Roxana that if she's lucky enough to meet a kind master, maybe she'll be buried in an Adelia coffin. It's a cruel hope, but the only one she can offer. This, she says, is her final gift as a friend. Roxana remembers the man who bought her, boasting that she was being sold to the king of Hobion for a high price. That king, infamous for his obsession with beautiful women, might even take her as a lover. The thought makes her stomach turn. Curled in the dark, Roxana lies motionless. After what happened to her family, What does anything matter anymore? Whether she's sold to a palace or shackled in chains, it's all the same. Her dignity, her status, her name, none of it matters now. Her eyes open faintly, not in defiance, but in resignation. Nothing can undo what's been done. On deck, the slavers shout in protest, insisting the knights have no right. But their cries are silenced by swift justice. Below, Roxana's thoughts drift again. She wishes a monster would appear and kill her, that she'd be tossed into the sea and forgotten. Maybe then, her soul would drift across the waves and, by some miracle, find her family again. That would be better than this. The knights begin opening the crates. One of them calls out, "Slaves packed inside like cargo." Another confirms more in a different box. Floyd's voice cuts through the chaos, commanding their immediate arrest. In the shadows, someone hears something strange. A voice. Not a monster's growl, but a human whisper. Something, or someone, is still alive in there. The only place on the continent where slavery is outlawed is Torkin. And its lord, the man known as the Red Tiger, is feared for his ruthless war against monsters. Floyd Carlo Latine. As he rips open the crate, the light floods in, and Roxana's eyes widen in shock. The man before her is no stranger. He's the one who burns monsters to ash. Roxana stirs weakly, her body barely responding. Floyd stands before the open crate, stunned by what he sees. One of his knights approaches, hesitating. The silence is broken by the sound of something shifting, something heavy and alive. The truth is about to surface. Floyd's breath catches. He stares at the girl inside the crate, her body frail, her eyes dim. But there's no mistaking it. This is Roxana, the princess of Kanta. He whispers it aloud, unable to believe what he's seeing. How could someone like her end up here, like this? Those eyes, glowing green, rimmed with gold, he remembers them. So full of life once, now dulled by suffering. He sees her as she was, laughing in the sun, radiant and proud. But the woman before him is broken. Still, there's no doubt. This is Princess Roxana of Kanta. Then he sees it, the sunflower brand, burned into her skin. The mark of slavery, his fists clench. Wasn't killing her family enough? They branded her too. They turned a princess into property. Rage, horror, sorrow, they all surge through him as he steps forward, barely able to contain the fire building inside. A wave of emotion crashes over Floyd, too vast to name. His cursed flame ignites without warning, spiraling out in a vortex of heat and fury. The knights stagger back, shielding themselves from the sudden blaze. The ship groans under the weight of the fire. No one dares move. Flames roar across the deck, wild and unrelenting. Floyd screams for it to stop, but the cursed fire doesn't listen. He curses it, knowing it's about to spiral out of control again. If it continues, everything will burn. His men, the ship, and her. The princess. He pleads, voice cracking, begging for it to end. Not like this. Not again. She's already lost her kingdom, her name, her freedom. And now, because of him, will she die in flames too? Floyd's heart pounds as he watches her stir. Then, she reaches out. Her fingers brush his hand. The fire halts. He stares at her, stunned. How could this be? Through the smoke, Roxana whispers. Her voice is barely audible, but the words are clear. She calls to the flower, Adelia. She begs for permission, for peace. Only then, she says, can her soul rest. Maybe, just maybe, she'll see her family again. Her eyes close, surrendering to the quiet. The fire, once wild and untamed, suddenly fades. Smoke drifts upward as silence returns. Floyd looks around in disbelief. A breeze brushes past him, cool and gentle. He whispers to himself, trying to understand. Where did it come from? The question lingers, where did that breeze come from? Floyd doesn't have the answer. But there's no time to dwell. He lifts Roxana into his arms and carries her out of the hold. The sun greets them as they emerge onto the deck. Around them, the ship creaks, but the fire is gone. He holds her close, determined to protect what remains. He checks her breath, faint, but there. Relief floods him. She's alive. Barely. Her body is so thin, so frail, it's as if death already claimed her. One of the knights watches silently. Then, she mutters something. Please. Flower. Allow. Floyd realizes she must be praying to the flower of Adelia. He wonders aloud, does he look like the kind of man who wouldn't even grant her that? Floyd turns to his men and says he's heading back. They're to handle the cleanup. One knight nods, confused but obedient. As Floyd disappears from view, the others whisper, who was that woman he carried? One confirms what they all suspect, she's the princess of Kanta. Another adds that Floyd seemed to recognize her. That alone says everything. On the docks, the knights question workers while two of them talk quietly. One doubts their lord could have recognized her, he barely remembers the handmaidens he sees daily. But the other shakes his head. The moment Floyd saw her, he knew she was a princess. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe it was something deeper. Either way, there's no denying it now, she's royalty. And he knew it the second their eyes met. One of the knights recalls how the king of Enilta had sent his daughter to Torkin several times in hopes of forming an alliance, but Floyd never remembered her face. Yet the moment he laid eyes on the woman pulled from the slave crate, he recognized her instantly as Roxiana Franch, the princess of Kanta. The implication stuns them. As they discuss it on the docks, Hexton suddenly appears, reeking of alcohol and startling the others with his unexpected return. Hexton, oblivious to the chaos he missed, casually asks what happened with the princess of Kanta. One of the knights explains that Roxiana was found inside a slave crate, and that their lord, Floyd, simply picked her up and carried her away without hesitation. Hexton is stunned that Floyd acted so directly. They add that the fire damage around them came from Floyd losing control of his powers in the moment. The knights reflect on how Roxiana emerged from the fire completely unharmed, despite being right in front of Floyd when he lost control. They marvel that the princess of Kanta is still alive, though one of them bitterly notes that being branded has made her existence as good as death. They recall the Marquis of Partland from the kingdom of Bionique, who had a beloved daughter. When she was branded, he couldn't forgive it. He ended her life himself. They remember a tragic case from 2 years ago, a noble girl kidnapped by bandits, later forced to serve a foreign count. Even though she lost her purity, her father, the Marquis, still wanted to bring her home. But when he saw the brand on her back, he couldn't forgive it. He avenged her by killing the count, then killed her too. The knights fall silent, realizing Roxiana has no one left, no family to avenge her. She stands utterly alone. One knight warns that if Ganya discovers Roxiana is still alive, they won't stay silent. Another mutters that maybe it would have been better if she had died with her family. That earns him a hard slap from Hexton, who growls that he has a real talent for saying the worst possible things. The tension between them flares as the weight of Roxiana's situation settles in. In a memory filled with warmth, Roxiana recalls her younger brother Rian yelling not to call him by his nickname. He had promised to visit her often, even after she married, and said he'd scold Crown Prince Lucas Valior if he ever bothered her. She remembers how happy she was when Rian was born, how she swore to be a kind and loving sister to him. That promise still echoes in her heart. Roxiana remembers the countless times she promised herself she would endure. But now, facing her brother's image, she asks why he was the one who died. Why was she the only one who survived? The question haunts her, heavy with guilt and sorrow. She sees Rian again, his body bloodied, and the truth crashes down. Her entire family is gone. They died by cold blades while she lived, unaware and untouched. She is the only one left, and that knowledge crushes her. Roxiana had only been praying for her own happiness. Now she wakes in an unfamiliar, ornate room. Disoriented, she looks around and asks where she is. A man enters, calm and composed, and gently asks if she's in pain. The man introduces himself as Kirshan Leffy, a knight and physician in service to the Grand Duke of Retienne. Roxiana listens quietly, her expression unreadable, as she tries to process everything around her. Roxiana whispers that she thought she had died. Kirshan nods, saying everyone believed the same. After all, few survived the Grand Duke's flames, yet she has not a single scratch. Roxiana stares at him, confused, and quietly asks, why? She asks him why he didn't let her die. Her voice is low, but the pain behind it is sharp. Kirshan pauses, then says it would be best to discuss that with the Grand Duke himself. He was waiting for her to wake. Roxiana declares that she is no longer a princess. Kirshan doesn't argue. He simply replies that she can discuss that with His Highness, and quietly excuses himself, leaving her alone in the grand room. The ornate room reminds her too much of the past. It's just like her chamber when she was still the Princess of Kanta. The illusion suffocates her. Her country is gone, her family dead, and she alone remains. She remembers turning her back on them in that cold, dark well and surviving. She repeats to herself that there's no way she could still be a princess. Her voice trembles as she calls out to her mother, father, and brother Lonian. Tears fall as she whispers that she wants to die too. She thinks she could die right now if she wanted to, but what if someone takes pity on her and grants her Adelia's flower? That sacred bloom would prevent her from reuniting with her family in death. She reaches out toward the memory of their faces, longing for peace. She fears being separated from her family even in death. Just then, the door opens. A tall man enters and asks how she's feeling. She looks up and recognizes him immediately. Torkin's red tiger, Grand Duke Latane. His gaze is sharp and commanding. She now understands why people call him the Red Tiger of the battlefield. As he stands before her, he calmly says there's only one wish he desires. She realizes that only this man, the master of the Grand Duchy, can grant what she wants. He mentions that Kirshan said she had been starving and offers to get her anything she desires. She watches him closely. If he's this kind even to a branded slave, maybe, just maybe, he'll understand her true wish. She tries to rise, but her legs give out. The Grand Duke catches her before she collapses. He tells her not to push herself. She can't even stand. She whispers that she's nothing now, a lowly being who has lost even the protection of the gods. She kneels before him, her body trembling, and begs for permission to speak. He watches her, noting how thin and fragile she is, as if she might crumble at any moment. Still, he grants her permission. "Speak, princess." She tells him she'll do anything if he grants her one request. He assumes she wants revenge. She insists if he commands her to fight, she'll be his shield. If he wants her to kill, she'll be the sword that never hesitates. But the Grand Duke calmly replies that he already has plenty of warriors bigger and stronger than her. Then she says if he commands her to become a seductress, she'll do that too. The Grand Duke raises an eyebrow and replies dryly so she'll fight for him by day and serve him in bed by night. Her desperation is clear, but he doesn't mock her. Just listens. He tells her that if she's willing to go that far, it's a good deal. So what does she want? Her answer stuns him. If she's to live like this and die anyway, she begs him not to place her in Adelia's coffin. Just discard her. Throw her into the sea with a stone tied to her body so no one finds her. Or bury her deep in the ground, far from the reach of magic. Her eyes hold no light, only the emptiness of someone already dead. Floyd Latine warns Roxana of the consequences of her request. If she isn't buried in Adelia's coffin, dark magic could seep into her corpse, reviving her as one of the undead. Roxana, unfazed, tells him she already knows. She calmly explains that if such a fate befalls her, he has her permission to tear her body apart and feed it to beasts. Floyd then holds up a plaque engraved with Adelia's sacred flower, explaining that even barbarians who reject the gods carry these charms. The power of dark magic has grown so strong that 7 out of 10 corpses now rise again. Burial in Adelia's coffin isn't just tradition, it's survival. Floyd stares at her, baffled. After all her desperate pleas, after offering her body and loyalty, the only thing she truly wants is to avoid Adelia's coffin, not revenge. He presses her, no vengeance for the family she lost? Roxana lowers her gaze and answers calmly. Her parents and siblings are already gone. What would revenge bring her now? Floyd argues that, at the very least, it would offer gratification. She could make her enemies kneel and mock them until her heart was content. But Roxana doesn't flinch. She has no desire for such victories. Roxana quietly insists that she simply wants her corpse to be discarded, never placed in Adelia's coffin. She knows the dishonor of such a request. In their world, to be denied that sacred burial is a fate worse than death. But she cannot tell Floyd the full truth. Not about what happened to her family. Not yet. Floyd, however, refuses. He says he cannot bring himself to toss her body away so carelessly. If she truly wants to die like that, she'll have to do it herself. As he turns to leave, she reaches out and grabs his leg, her voice trembling as she begs him not to make her do it alone. Still kneeling, Roxana makes one final plea. If her body is ever found, she asks that not even a single plank from Adelia be used to cover it. Floyd lets out a sharp breath, half laughing in disbelief. He tells her she must think him a truly vile and merciless man. Then, his tone shifts. He remembers hearing that long ago, when she had nowhere else to go, she once took refuge in his palace. That memory lingers, even if she doesn't recall it now. Roxana asks him to remember the kindness she once received from him, hoping it might move him. But Floyd only sighs. If she doesn't even remember the moment herself, why should he? He's not a generous man, he says. As he touches a blooming Adelia flower, he adds that he has no intention of discarding her in a place devoid of its presence. He may not be kind, but he's not that merciless either. Floyd leans closer, his voice low but firm. In this luxurious palace, he tells her, she will eat well, sleep well, and live well. That is the extent of what he can offer her. As he gently lifts her chin, his words carry both command and compassion. It's not a promise of love or redemption, but of survival, dignity, and rest. Floyd Latane, heir of Rodwin and a proud Torcan supremacist, is feared across the land. Known as the Red Tiger, he has carved a reputation slaying demonic beasts with unmatched ferocity. Despite his fame, he's never shown interest in women. Not once. Gossip flows through the halls. Floyd doesn't allow handmaidens into his service, not even the most beautiful daughters of noble families. Some whisper he prefers men, a rumor that barbarians mock him for. But the Chamberlain knows the truth. Though now just a servant, he once stood guard over Floyd's mother, and has seen the shadows that shaped the man. In the past, the Chamberlain served as a royal guard to Elitensa Latine, Floyd's mother. After her tragic death, he witnessed firsthand the bitterness that took root in Floyd's heart. The boy who once clung to his mother's side grew to despise women. Even now, though he's of age to marry, the Chamberlain understands why he never did. Under the moonlit dome of the palace, the Chamberlain watches with quiet sympathy. Last night, for the first time, Floyd held a woman in his arms, not in lust or duty, but in protection. The sight stirred something deep within the old man, a sorrow for both Floyd's struggle and the broken girl he carried. Floyd issues a clear command: Roxana will stay in the Lily Palace. Preparations are to begin immediately. The Chamberlain bows in acknowledgement, but inwardly he's stunned. He never imagined the Grand Duke would bring home the central figure of such a tragic story. It's an unexpected move, but one he quietly accepts. One of the older maids watches silently, her heart heavy. Maybe it's because she has a daughter around Roxana's age, but something about the girl's condition fills her with sorrow. She doesn't know the full story, but whatever happened to the princess, it must have been devastating. The next morning, under the Grand Duke's orders, Marquess Janail Kohiden and Countess Eleldron gather to assign attendants. After much deliberation, they select a maid named Petria to serve Roxana. It's a choice born not of status, but of character. Ideally, a noble-born handmaiden should have been chosen to serve the princess. But word of Roxana's fall from grace had already spread. Even though slavery was abolished, no one wanted to serve a woman whose status had dropped so low. As Petria walks toward her new assignment, the morning sun warms her shoulders. But Petria was different. She knows the others turned away from this duty, but she's thankful that the opportunity came to her. Petria, the daughter of a humble woodcutter, walks with purpose. She's never met someone like Roxana before, and wonders what the princess is like. Despite her low birth, she feels excitement. This duty, no matter how heavy, is something she'll carry with pride. Among the staff, Petria considers herself one of the quicker and sharper minds. She promises to be helpful to the princess, no matter what others think. To her, Roxana is still royalty. And if the Grand Duke treasures her, then Petria will do her part to protect that trust. Back in the room, Floyd watches Roxana kneel before him. Her desperation weighs heavily on the air. He exhales and finally says it, "Stop. Enough, princess." Floyd lifts her gently, repeating that it's enough. He had sworn to protect her, to keep her safe, and yet all she asks for is a death without peace. Her voice trembles as she says there's only one thing she wants. Floyd can't understand it. How could someone wish for something so cruel? Floyd clenches his jaw. He wants to shout at her, to shake her out of this despair. But now isn't the time. Instead, he turns away, muttering that he's in no mood to stay. Roxana calls after him, but he doesn't stop. Petria watches, stunned by the tension between them. Before leaving, Floyd turns to Petria. His voice is sharp, commanding. She is to attend to Roxana with the utmost care, lay carpets along every path she walks, handpick every fruit she eats, only the finest for her. Petria nods, overwhelmed by the weight of his expectations. As Floyd storms out, Petria hears soft sobs echoing from the room. She pauses, heart aching. What could have happened to make the princess cry like that? She doesn't know the answer, but she wants to find out. Petria steps into the room and sees Roxana properly for the first time. Despite her fragile state, there's no denying it, she's beautiful. Ethereal even. Petria's resolve strengthens. She will serve this woman with everything she has. Petria bows and introduces herself as the maid who will be serving her. No, her handmaiden. She gently urges Roxana to rest and offers to bring her a meal. If there's anything she wants, she only needs to say so. But Roxana remains quiet for a moment, then whispers the truth that weighs on her heart. She's not a princess anymore. Roxana sits slumped on the cold marble, her voice barely above a whisper as she rejects the name Petria offers her. She says her kingdom has fallen, her entire family is dead, and she couldn't even protect her people. Kanta, once a proud nation, is now reduced to a colony of Ganya. With everything lost, she questions how she could possibly still be called a princess. Her voice breaks as she tells Petria to call her whatever she wants. Slave girl, she says, would be more fitting. Petria stares at her, stunned by the weight of her words. Roxana lowers her head, her voice thick with grief as she pleads not to be called a princess. Her words hang in the air like a final verdict. Outside, the skies above the palace are clear, the white towers of Torkin gleaming under the sun. A thought lingers. If someone saves you from slavery and helps you return to a peaceful life, shouldn't that be enough to start over? Elsewhere in the palace, Floyd Latin sits in silence, his hand tightening into a fist. He reflects bitterly that most people would feel grateful for a second chance, but not Roxana. Her eyes are lifeless, her words soaked in despair. It's as if she's already given up, speaking like someone who would rather be discarded than laid to rest with dignity in Adelia's coffin. Floyd grits his teeth, frustrated by how much Roxana's words have gotten under his skin. He slams his hand on the table, knocking over a cup of hot coffee. One of the men yelps as the liquid splashes onto his hand. Floyd mutters a curse under his breath, the heat of the drink nothing compared to the heat of his anger. The man who had spoken rashly apologizes, trying to calm the tension. Another asks Floyd if he heard the report. Floyd nods. The merchant who owned the slave ship claimed ignorance, saying he didn't know it was transporting slaves. The captain, newly hired, is suspected of being bribed. The merchant has agreed to cover repair costs once the investigation concludes. Among the rescued slaves, 10 have expressed a desire to remain in Torkan, while 7 wish to return to their homelands. Only Roxana remains undecided. One of Floyd's commanders asks if there's anything else to report. Floyd, still tense, brings up the matter weighing most on his mind. What do they intend to do with the Princess of Kanta? The commander hesitates, then suggests that once she recovers, the best course would be to give her a reasonable sum of money and send her away from Torkan. A knight attempts to de-escalate the situation, urging Floyd to think rationally. But Floyd rises from his seat, fury radiating from him. He demands to know if he looks calm. The man he personally appointed as commander has the audacity to refer to a nation's princess as, quote, that woman, and suggest abandoning her. Floyd's voice sharpens as he warns that if this was meant as a joke, now would be a good time to laugh and end this farce. Floyd's anger burns hotter than the flames in his mind. He paces toward the balcony, his voice rising with each step. To even consider casting out a woman who has lost her country and family, how could they be so heartless? He turns back to the room, eyes blazing, and demands to know if they're truly serious about throwing her away. The room falls silent until one of the knights mutters the name of the man responsible, Lucas Fury. Floyd's rage flares again. Are they all so terrified of that bastard from Ganya? His voice echoes through the chamber, daring them to admit their fear. Floyd slams his hand against the table, but the knights try to reason with him. They insist it's not fear of Ganya, but practicality. Their forces are stretched thin, dealing with magical beasts. If they send troops to protect a foreign princess, it could provoke conflict. They clarify they don't mean to send her away immediately, only after she's recovered. Floyd snaps that waiting changes nothing. It's still abandonment. Floyd's hand hits the table again, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel. He rises, demanding if they truly intend to risk sending her back into slavery. Do they even understand what her fate could be? He glares at the silent room, daring anyone to answer. Floyd exhales sharply, his patience spent. He looks up toward the ornate chandelier, then down at the men seated before him. Pathetic fools, he mutters, before turning on his heel and storming out of the chamber. The room erupts in awkward tension. One knight fumbles for words, trying to steer the conversation to safer topics like water supplies. Another scolds him for his tactlessness, pointing out that Floyd became angry because they spoke of Roxana without compassion. The knight protests. Was he really wrong? Another man agrees, saying Torkin truly is in danger because of her. Then he turns to Hexton, accusing him of doing nothing but criticize. The knight challenges Hexton directly, asking if he has a better plan. Hexton hesitates, then admits he doesn't. He argues that no matter how much they pity the princess, they must act in the interest of the greater good. Kanta was never an ally. To risk Torkin's safety for a stranger would be reckless. Hexton continues, noting that even their own capital is on the verge of crisis. In such a fragile state, they can't afford to take on someone who demands luxury and offers nothing in return. As his words fade, the scene shifts to the quiet of night, the palace bathed in moonlight. Floyd walks alone through the darkened halls, the chill of the night matching the storm in his chest. He curses under his breath. From the day he was branded the Cursed One, he's never known peace, not a single night of rest in a place that felt safe. He steps onto the balcony, the cool air brushing past him. Below, he spots Roxana standing by a window, her figure still. He wonders why it enrages him that she, who could have lived in comfort, now looks like she's ready to leap at any moment. Floyd admits he can understand her grief. Unlike him, she must have known love, warmth, and family. But even those who suffered as she did eventually found happiness. He remembers his own past, filthy, broken, but still alive. If he could survive, why can't she? Floyd remembers the darkness he once lived in, the despair that nearly consumed him. Yet somehow, he survived. If Roxana has no will to live, then she should at least live for vengeance. Not as a siren luring herself toward death, but as someone who can strike back. She should live for revenge, not ruin. Floyd stares out into the night. If she continues to crave a meaningless death, then there's nothing he can do. Kirshen approaches quietly, and Floyd tells him not to worry. Roxana doesn't need to be pushed. She already wants to die on her own. One of the knights mutters that if Roxana realizes how many people want her gone, she might just bite her tongue and end it. He pauses, then adds that perhaps Floyd isn't angry, he's just disappointed in her. Floyd says nothing, standing alone on the balcony, his back to them all. Kirshen speaks gently, reminding Floyd that Roxana has lost everything, her home, her family, her dignity. She hasn't even had time to grieve. Not everyone is as strong as him. She needs time, he says. Please, give her that much. Kirshen sighs and mutters that he just hopes her hair doesn't get any shorter. In the sunlit room, Roxana sits in silence, her long hair falling over her shoulders. Patria watches her quietly, unsure of what to say. Patria remembers how flustered she was when Roxana insisted on not being called a princess. But in the end, she couldn't help it. She called her Lady Roxana. She apologizes, saying if she doesn't serve her properly, she'll be scolded by His Highness. Realizing her words were selfish, she bows her head and apologizes again. Seeing Roxana apologize to someone of her low status, Patria feels moved. She realizes she has no choice but to respect her wishes. Roxana takes a breath, and Patria notices the scent in the air. It smells salty and a bit fishy, the smell of the sea. Unlike Kanta, which was landlocked, Torkan is close to the ocean. Maybe that difference will bring change. The sea glimmers beneath a sky that stretches endlessly, its surface catching the light like scattered jewels. Someone's voice echoes in Roxana's memory, softly urging her to go see it for herself, to witness its beauty. They speak of the sparkling sand and the waves that meet the sky, promising a peace that settles in the soul. But as Roxana lies still, her eyes closed, her thoughts drift elsewhere. What good is that beauty, she wonders, if she must take it in alone? The scent of food rises from the tray, but Roxana's stomach turns. The moment she looks at it, her throat tightens, and she gags, the memory of her parents trapped in a box flashing through her mind. She mutters that she can't eat, can't do anything. Patria, alarmed, calls out to her, her voice trembling with concern as she watches the princess crumble again. In the darkness behind her closed eyes, Roxana drifts into a dream. Stars shimmer over dark waves, and a small voice calls out to her. Lottie's voice, soft and distant, pleads for her to come out to the garden. She floats in the void, the memory of her sister's voice reaching for her like a lifeline. The voice urges her to hurry, to drink some water, to live, not to die. Lottie's voice lingers in her mind, urging her not to die. In the waking world, footsteps echo through the corridor. Floyd enters the room and sees Roxana seated beside Patria. He asks how long it's been since the princess last ate, his tone calm but firm, the weight of concern buried beneath his words. Patria answers quietly, explaining that Roxana tried to eat soup now and then, but always ended up vomiting. From the very first day, she hasn't kept down a single meal. Floyd listens, then dismisses her with a nod. As she steps away, Roxana's hand curls into her lap, trembling. Floyd notices the movement and pauses, something shifting in his expression. Floyd steps forward and grabs her by the shoulders, his voice rising in frustration. He demands to know if she's mocking him. If she dares to kneel before him again, he warns, he will truly become angry. His words are not just fury, they're desperation, a plea buried beneath the rage. He presses further, asking if she's already arranged for someone to throw her body into the sea once she starves to death. Why not just bite her tongue now and get it over with? Roxana answers softly, it would be less painful than starving. Her words sting, and Floyd clenches his fist, demanding to know if she's even going to respond to him anymore. Floyd turns away, trying to make sense of his own frustration. She's just sitting there silently, yet she's storming through his mind. He mutters that perhaps the handmaiden has been serving her incorrectly. Roxana's eyes widen at the accusation, startled by the sudden shift in blame. Without another word, Floyd picks up a piece of fruit and places it in his mouth, chewing slowly. Then he repeats the motion, this time guiding the fruit to Roxana's lips. The gesture is simple, almost absurd, but it leaves no room for refusal. He's showing her, if she can't eat on her own, then he'll do it for her. Roxana stares at him, stunned. Floyd smiles faintly, remarking that all Patria had to do was feed her directly like this. But she didn't, did she? His tone is light, but the implication cuts deep. He asks again, can she eat now? Kneeling before her, Floyd repeats his earlier words. It seems the handmaiden wasn't doing her job properly. He should have just done it himself from the beginning. He presses another piece of fruit to her lips, and this time, Roxana opens her mouth. Floyd stands tall, his voice steady as he tells her again, this is how it should have been done. He places the fruit in her mouth himself, and as she chews, her eyes widen. The act is humiliating, but it also forces her to engage, to act, to live. He watches her chew and mocks her gently, asking if she can even bite his finger off with that little strength. Roxana tears up, the insult stinging more than she expected. But deep down, she realizes the truth. He's doing this to provoke her, to humiliate her into fighting back, to make her want to live. Roxana understands now. He's taunting her to reignite her will to live. She remembers her own despair, how she believed she was nothing but a burden, that Torkin would be better off without her. So why is he trying so hard to keep her alive? Floyd answers quietly, wanting to die, having no will to live. He knows it well, but still he says, try living. Even if breathing itself feels disgusting, even if it hurts, if she forces herself to live just a little longer, good things may happen. There may be days when she smiles. And if she does, someday she might even be glad she endured. In her mind, Roxana sees a version of herself smiling, radiant and alive. Could she really become that person? She stares at Floyd, asking how he could possibly know that. How could he know what she's feeling so precisely? Her hand trembles as she reaches out, as if trying to grasp the answer from him. Tears welling in her eyes, Roxana pleads with him. Just let her die. She'll obey any command, she says, if he'll only tie her to a stone and throw her into the sea. Floyd looks at her quietly, and then nods. All right, he says, let's do this. Her eyes widen in shock. Floyd tells her to live properly for 1 healthy year. If after that she still wants to drown herself, he'll send her to the sea himself. He'll even give her an adelia flower to take with her, just as she wished. Somewhere no one can find her. But there's a condition. If she doesn't recover enough to walk within a week, if she doesn't speak to anyone, then their promise is void. Still, wherever she may take her last breath, he swears he'll ensure she rests in the arms of the gods. That's his vow. He promises her something else too. If she lives, he'll bury her in adelia flowers for the rest of her life. She'll never escape them. In her mind, Roxana floats in a sea of blue, surrounded by petals, her body drifting weightlessly through the promise of death and the burden of life. The light filters through the palace windows as Betrayal watches quietly. After everything, Lady Roxana, who couldn't eat at all, had finally begun to take food again. Even the chef had started to worry. But now, something had changed. After meeting with the Grand Duke, Roxana began to eat more, slowly, painfully, but steadily. She could now finish a proper meal, though it looked as if she were swallowing shards of iron. Betrayal watched with a heavy heart but chose to believe in her recovery. A maid steps forward and announces that Lady Roxana's bath is ready. One of the maids introduces a new girl who will assist with Roxana's bath, but the princess declines. She says she'll bathe alone. The maids hesitate, but one of them whispers that it's a relief. She had been dreading serving the troublesome princess. As Roxana walks toward the bath, her steps are slow but steady. She's doing this herself. The water ripples gently as Roxana steps into the bath. She looks around and notes how luxurious everything is. Torkin must be wealthy, she thinks. It wasn't enough that they reclaimed land overrun by beasts pouring from the rift. They turned it into something beautiful again. Even the bathroom is ornate and extravagant. Roxana recalls what she heard. The Grand Duke earned his title by annihilating the monsters that once occupied this land. The memory of those beasts flashes in her mind, savage and bloodthirsty. Monsters. That's what he defeated to build this peace. Even now, Roxana remembers Robert's words. He had once warned her that even elite knights struggled against beasts, creatures born from the rift, wielding unnatural strength and terrifying abilities. But he had smiled at her then, his voice steady and sure, and told her not to worry. As long as he was by her side, she would never have to fear them. He had promised to protect her, no matter what. Back then, she hadn't been afraid. Not because the monsters were any less terrifying, but because Robert had been there, her loyal royal knight, her shield. But that same loyalty had cost him his life. He died protecting her, and his death was only one among many. Countless lives had been lost in service to the French royal family, and yet she had never been allowed to grieve them. Even now, submerged in warm water, her heart remained cold with guilt. She whispers his name, Robert, as if it might reach him beyond the grave. She makes a silent vow beneath the surface of the bath. Just 1 year. That's all she asks. 1 year to live, to breathe, to endure. And then, she promises, she will join them. Her family, Robert. Everyone she lost. Her feet hit the floor as she rises from the water, driven by that promise. 1 year. She will endure it for them. Petria steps forward timidly, offering to help Roxana comb her hair. But Roxana gently refuses. She tells her maid that she is not truly a princess anymore, and doesn't deserve to be treated like one. When Petria tries to insist, Roxana explains that every act of kindness makes her feel like the princess she once was, and that illusion is hard to bear. It reminds her of everything she's lost. Roxana thanks Petria for her service, and urges her to rest, promising to tell the Grand Duke how well she's done. As she walks away, her thoughts linger. She feels sorry for the kind maid, but believes this is the right thing to do. The servants here must have dreamed of serving nobility, not someone like her, a fallen royal, a slave in all but name. She doesn't want to burden them with her presence. The garden is breathtaking, filled with sunlight and vibrant blooms. But to Roxana, it's just a temporary refuge, a place she'll leave behind in a year. As she walks through the greenery, something rustles nearby. A small face peeks through the bushes, and her eyes widen in surprise. A child is watching her. Petria calls out in alarm, warning that Roxana hasn't recovered enough to be running. But Roxana doesn't stop. Her white gown billows as she rushes down the steps, drawn toward something she hasn't felt in a long time, curiosity, maybe even hope. Petria's voice echoes behind her, but Roxana keeps going, her steps light as she flees the palace's shadow and enters the sunlit garden. Her heart pounds not from fear, but from something unfamiliar, urgency without dread. She reaches out, chasing a glimpse of something she thought she'd never see again. She had clung to the hope that her niece and nephew, Francine and Winyal, might have been spared. They were so young, so innocent. Surely the world wouldn't be cruel enough to take them too. She calls their names aloud, as if by doing so she can summon them back into her arms. She had truly believed they would survive. 2 children stand before her, startled and unsure. The boy apologizes, explaining they weren't supposed to be there. They had snuck in. Roxana looks at them, heart aching, and tells them it's all right. They can stay. They can play here as long as they like. She tells them softly that for now, she's the one staying here. The children's eyes light up with excitement. They thank her and run off to explore more of the garden, calling her a kind fairy. Roxana watches them go, a faint smile touching her lips for the first time in what feels like forever. Watching the children play, Roxana feels something she hadn't expected: freedom. Not from her past, but from the weight of it. Petria stands beside her and gently reminds her that the wind is getting cold. Maybe it's time to go back inside. One of the children runs up to her, arms outstretched. She throws herself into Roxana's embrace and calls her a fairy. With a bright smile, she offers a small bouquet of wildflowers. It's a gift. A simple, heartfelt present. Roxana breath catches as she takes it. The child thanks Roxana for letting them play in the garden. But Roxana shakes her head. No, she thinks, it's not them who should be grateful. She's the one who should be thanking them. For coming. For smiling. For reminding her what it feels like to be alive. The little girl looks up at her with wide, trusting eyes. Roxana clutches the bouquet gently, overwhelmed by the innocence in that gaze. She can barely find the words to express her gratitude. As they walk hand in hand, the boy says they were lucky the twin knights didn't catch them. The girl beams and says she really likes the fairy. But the boy shakes his head. She's not a fairy, he says. She's a princess. The girl gasps in wonder, imagining Roxana in a grand gown, regal and radiant. The girl asks if their country really has a princess. The boy nods, saying she lives in the Lily Palace now. It's a fancy place, the girl adds. But then she pauses, confused. If she's a princess, why was she crying? The memory of Roxana's tears lingers in their minds. Maybe, the boy suggests, she lost something really precious. The girl nods, comparing it to their sister Kiri, who cried for days after losing her boyfriend. If it's something like that, she says, then it must be truly heartbreaking. The girl grabs her brother's hand and declares they should be nice to the princess and help her smile again, just like they did for Kiri. He agrees, and they walk off together, unaware that someone is watching them from nearby with a fond, exasperated sigh. The man scoops the girl into his arms, asking where she ran off to this time. She giggles and says they were at the Lily Palace garden. Her brother adds that they met the princess there. The man blinks in surprise. The princess? The boy explains that the princess came outside the palace and didn't get mad even though they were playing nearby. They gave her flowers to thank her, and then, he hesitates, she started crying while talking. The man processes this in silence, surprised that such a small gesture moved her so deeply. The girl nudges her brother, embarrassed he mentioned the crying. Floyd had once made a deal with Roxana. If she didn't regain enough strength to walk or speak to others within a week, the deal was off. But somehow she had met those conditions. She had walked. She had spoken. And now, hearing the children's story, he doesn't know whether to feel relieved or saddened. When the girl asks if they can visit the Lily Palace again, he nods. Of course they can. Floyd pats the boy's head and tells them to make sure they cheer up the princess so she doesn't cry again. He pulls them into a hug and quietly promises to keep their little adventure a secret from their father. For now, this will be just between them. Inside the quiet sitting room, a vase of fresh flowers sits on the table. Roxana gazes at them, her expression unreadable. Those flowers, given so innocently by a child, now rest in her home. That day, something had changed. Something had begun to stir again inside her. Roxana closes her eyes as a familiar voice echoes in her mind, calling out to her with urgency. The memory stirs something buried deep, glimmering lights, blooming flowers, and a desperate plea for survival. Someone had once begged her, Lottie, to drink water, to stay alive, because humans can't survive without it. That voice, filled with warmth and desperation, had followed her since childhood. It had always been there, whispering through the darkness, urging her not to give up. As fresh blossoms swayed gently in the air, the voice from her memory continues, promising to care for the little ones and help them grow into long, healthy lives. Roxana walks slowly through the sunlit room, her presence quiet but steady. She remembers how those voices once irritated her when she was overwhelmed and exhausted. But even then, they never left her. They comforted her, always. Even when she didn't realize she needed it. Roxana offers a quiet smile and silently apologizes for the thought she once held. She had misunderstood that gentle presence. Just then, Patria enters the room and announces that her meal is ready. She adds that since Roxana has been eating more lately, they prepared a bit extra this time. The small gesture doesn't go unnoticed, another quiet thread of care woven into her day. Looking at the generous spread before her, Roxana gently says she can't eat it all alone, and invites Patria to join her. Patria stammers in surprise, unsure if she should, but Roxana insists, urging her to sit and eat together. Patria hesitates, then slowly accepts. As they share the meal, Patria admits that, thanks to Roxana, she's been eating better these days. Even Jackie, the apprentice chef, who usually eats the leftovers, is grateful. Roxana blinks, surprised by the ripple effect of her small progress. Patria, cheeks puffed with concern, insists that Roxana should be the one eating more. Roxana assures her that she's been eating plenty lately and not to worry. Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of footsteps, and both turn to see Floyd standing at the doorway. He pauses, noticing the meal in progress, and politely asks if he may come in. Patria immediately drops to her knees in panic, and Roxana follows suit, startled by his sudden appearance. Patria internally panics, realizing she's been caught eating with the princess. Floyd frowns and reminds them that he had told them not to kneel before him. Turning to Roxana, he gently insists that she finish her meal. She tries to excuse herself, but he firmly says he won't leave unless she eats at least one more plate. Roxana hesitates, unsure whether to push back. She asks if his request is truly in order. Floyd meets her gaze and confirms that it is. He tells her plainly, if she doesn't finish at least one more plate, he won't leave. With a quiet sigh, she resigns herself to his persistence. He stands beside her, quietly determined, unwilling to let her slip away into apathy again. Trying to shift the mood, Roxana asks Floyd if he likes flowers. He answers with a simple yes. She follows up by asking what else he likes, but before he can respond, she turns away, ignoring him completely. Floyd's smile falters as frustration creeps in. She's shutting him out again, and he knows it. Roxana quietly scribbles something down as Floyd shares that he sent people to the kingdom of Kanta. They should hear news soon. She pauses, considering the possibility, could someone else from the French royal family still be alive? The thought lingers, fragile and uncertain, like a candle flickering in the dark. Turning to Floyd, Roxana thanks him sincerely for everything he's done. But then her voice hardens with quiet resolve. If he truly wants her to survive, she begs him not to rekindle the hope she fought so hard to extinguish. Empty hope, she says, is more cruel than silence. All she asks is to be allowed to live, breathing, existing, without the burden of expectation. Floyd clenches his jaw, struggling to understand the anger rising inside him. Is it because she dismissed his sincerity? Or because she treats her own life like a bargaining chip? Maybe it's because even when offered help, she responds with resignation. His hand tightens into a fist as heat begins to surge. Flames threaten to erupt, but he forces himself to breathe. He must calm down. If he doesn't, the fire inside him might spiral out of control again. Roxana watches him carefully, sensing the tension. Floyd reminds himself that he can't afford to endanger her like before. But something's different this time. Despite his emotional turmoil, nothing ignites. No flames, no destruction. He's confused. His fire always reacts to strong emotion, bursting from his body and consuming everything around him. Yet now, standing beside her, there's only stillness. A realization begins to dawn on Floyd. Something has changed. He asks Roxana if he may hold her arm, just for a moment. She looks at him and replies that he doesn't need to ask, he is her master. He sighs, not out of relief but frustration. That's not what he wanted to hear. Not obedience. Not duty. Something else entirely. Floyd gently reaches for her arm, his touch light and careful. He says it will only be for a second. As his hand rests against her skin, he asks softly, "How does it feel?" He's not just asking about the physical sensation. He's searching for something deeper, something that might still be alive inside her. Roxana meets his gaze, startled but calm. Floyd asks if his touch feels unusually hot, or if there's anything else she can sense. The question hangs in the air. She looks down at where their hands meet, but says nothing. Her silence speaks volumes, of uncertainty, of confusion, of something stirring she can't yet name. A thought creeps into Roxana's mind. Could it be that Floyd is hoping for something more? That she'll respond to him not as a patient or subordinate, but as a woman? The idea unsettles her. She lifts her eyes to meet his, searching for answers, while he watches her quietly, waiting for a reaction she doesn't know how to give. Floyd blinks, taken aback by the shift in her expression. A blush creeps up his face as he realizes what she might be thinking. He quickly pulls back, flustered, and asks her what on earth she's talking about. The tension between them lingers, tangled in misunderstanding and unspoken feelings neither of them fully knows how to navigate. Outside the palace, the sun has long since set. The grand estate lies quiet under the blanket of night, its gardens bathed in moonlight. A lone figure walks slowly through the grounds, footsteps soft against the stone paths. The air is still, the silence heavy. Somewhere beyond the hedges, the shadows deepen, and the night holds its breath.